Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, hosted by Bruce Hutchin in episode number 141.
Welcome to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast, where it is all about whitetail deer hunting tips, techniques, and the stories so you can become a more successful whitetail deer hunter. And now your host, Bruce Hutchin.
Ken Olson, DIY whitetail hunter from Northwest Wisconsin, joins us on the show today. He has been hunting whitetails for over 50 years. For the last 10 years or so, Ken has established some nice bucks on his farm. He works with a Wi-Fi camera setup that allows him to monitor the comings and goings of whitetails right from his living room. Ken is also a very successful New York Life agent, fantastic husband, and awesome granddad. He also loves to fish in the Gulf of Mexico as well as the cold waters of Canada. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. I'm privileged to be sitting with Mr. Kenneth Olson. Ken and I connected 1977. We were both with the New York Life Company, and Ken and I have had maintained a relationship ever since. Ken went on to be very successful with the New York Life, and I went in the publishing industry and had a great career. And I'd like to spend 2 or 3 days, as much as 10 can tolerate me, up at KO Farms in Northwestern Wisconsin. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bruce. Nice to be back here.
Well, we're sitting at the farm. It's about 450 acres, and it sits on a lake, and we got marsh, we got ridges, and we got fantastic whitetail habitat. And let's talk about why you went to a wireless system.
Well, I wanted to monitor the behavior of these critters, not just the deer, but I get all kinds of pictures of all kinds of critters. But I've hunted for 50 years, and sitting in the woods seeing nothing just got old. And now with my system, I at least know what's around. I have been able to pattern and shoot one very nice buck. This year I had 2 dandies that I had on the pattern. And about a week before bow season started, down came the acorns, away went my deer. And I monitored those cameras for 6 weeks, seeing very little. And then as the acorns disappeared, my buck started to reappear. So rather than wasting the whole month of my life, I was playing golf and fishing in Florida for October, and now I'm back during the rut.
And Ken, I understand that you can be sitting down in Fort Myers and on your boat with your iPad or whatever and see whatever critters are walking past the camera lens. Is that correct?
There is a software that I believe it's called Teamviewer. That's pretty easy to install on my iPad. I can actually be in a blind out here and check what's walking by on the other cameras in the woods. But like you said, I can be in Florida, and it's rather fun to monitor what's going on. And then I do keep what I consider the best pictures, not only of deer, but everything else running around. And then I make a book of pictures in the wintertime. And I believe I'm on my 4th book this year.
Yeah, Ken and I were talking, and he's got over 15,000 photos are taken each year, not just of deer, but we have turkeys. And what else did we catch on the cameras, Ken?
A lot of sandhill cranes. I have lots of bears, bobcats. But the only thing that I believe that's in the neighborhood that I haven't had a picture in yet is a cougar. My neighbors claim to have seen them, but I haven't.
And how many food plots are you monitoring and travel corridors?
I have 11 cameras. 9 of them are on food plots. But those food plots might be as small as 0.2 of an acre. I think my biggest one is 0.7 of an acre. Most of the time I'll plant a brassica along with the clover. So we hunt the brassica the fall that I plant this stuff. And then the clover basically comes up for the next year and lasts as much as 5 years after that. I I mow it maybe I usually mow Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day, just to keep the clover down. Fertilize it spring and fall. I'm a city farmer.
Suburban farmers. There's a lot of us out there on Whitetail Rendezvous, that's for sure. Ken, let's talk about the mileage you have on your travel corridors. Now, ladies and gentlemen, he has roads that are basically food plots. What do you have on there? Clover?
Yeah, it's a mix of grass and clover, and I mow those trails periodically. But they're basically just access ways into the woods, or they were roads left over from bringing logging trucks in. A few of my food plots were actually landing areas for the logging operation.
So how many miles do you think you have of trails on your 450 acres?
My bet is about 6.
And it makes it really nice going to the stand, and you can walk or ATV, or if need be in gun season, you take a snowmobile. So let's talk about the system now. Let's talk about why you set it up. You were sharing a story about Mr. Torgerson, Brooke Torgerson. His dad donated a substantial ranch in New Mexico to the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. So true conservationist in that family. So how did you get a hold of Brooke, and what did he tell you about the system?
I actually got his name from the sports shop up in Hayward, and I stopped to visit with him, and he had cameras all over his acreage, and showed me how he looks at it on his laptop, and I became intrigued. It's all wireless, so we set these cameras out. You can put the camera alone and go back and forth and get a chip. In my case, these are wireless. They send their signal right to an antenna on my cabin. So it's hardwired to my laptop and then hardwired to the television. So 4 or 5 times a day, I'm turning the television on and see what's running around my woods. But some of these cameras, I'm sure I have at least 2 of them that are a mile away. So if I can't get the signal to come directly to the cabin, I can ping it off another camera and piggyback it in here. And they're battery operated, little 12 volt, like a motorcycle battery. I have about a 1 foot square solar panel. So these batteries, I never really have to touch them. And they just keep pinging their pictures in here.
What about weather? Wisconsin, we have sub-zero temperatures, 30 below. We have rain, we have wind. How does that affect the functionality of the system?
You can get water on the lens, or like your windshield will have water on it in the morning. You can have that on these pictures, so once in a while it gets pretty fuzzy. But the cameras are really quite tight. I do have bare boxes that they sit in, and once in a while I'll go around and put Rain X on the lens. But most of the time, especially the daytime pictures, are pretty sharp. Early morning when there's fog, that can be problematic. But for the most part, once these cameras are set, they just keep sending their pictures.
No, we took a video earlier, and that will be posted when we put this podcast, when we put this episode up, and you'll be able to see the video. But how far away can you pick up movement? And that's what triggers this.
Right. Some out to about 30 yards, probably I can get a fairly good picture with I think call it the X80 camera with their current lens. I'm no real tech person. My grandson has helped me a lot to troubleshoot this thing. And
thank God for grandkids.
The guys from Ohio actually came and helped me troubleshoot some issues. There are many different size antennas, surround, what do you call that? They're black and they're multi-dimensional, or directional, I guess. And some are direction. Some of these cameras work perfectly well with a little 8-inch antenna that comes with the camera. But it's been fun. I've learned a lot. It can get maddening when they all of a sudden, for some reason, it worked yesterday, but not today. So
let's talk about scouting. Now, you mentioned you were patterning a couple of bucks, and we had that 9, we had a big 8, and I think we had a 10 that we were all, trying to get underneath our tree this week. So how does that help you build your hit list?
Well, it builds my confidence. I know they're out there, so it's easier to sit. I mean, it's tough to sit all day long, and it's very seldom that I can do that. But if I know these bucks are running and I know they're in the neighborhood, then I can tough it out a little better. But what it's really done for me is it's allowed me to, without this, I'd sit in the woods in October. And the deer in northwest Wisconsin in October, they just disappear. They're in the oaks, they're eating acorns, they're seldom running around. So I just figured I was wasting too much of my life sitting in a tree stand waiting for something to come by. So now I hunt hard when I hunt, but I'm doing other things with my life rather than sitting on my butt.
So listeners, especially with people who have the opportunity, one, to have private land, so your cameras are going to stay there. And Ken is, how far are we off the road? 1.5 miles off a county road?
9/10 of a mile.
9/10 of a mile. So it's pretty secure. We got a lake on the western side, and we got swamps because the farm's made up of ridges and swamps. Is that correct, Ken?
Pretty much. It's adjacent to some agricultural land, which is helpful. So my neighbor, I'm sure he has a significant amount of crop loss, but within the last couple of years, the wolves have helped trim my herd. We're building it back, but we'll build it back, and then I'm sure the wolves will be back.
Do you ever use your cameras to share with the DNR and say, wait a minute, here's 30 days, and here's the wolves and the bears I've got on? Do you ever have a sit down with the DNR about depredation or how we can manage this?
I have not. I have sent around, one of my best pictures is that of a wolf carrying one of my deer in its mouth like a dog bone. And I have shared that with other people. But they tend to come in here. And last year I never went in the woods with my bow because the wolves and the coyotes, some people say they don't cohabitate. Some people think it's a coyote and not a wolf. I just know they terrorize my woods because a whole lot of my pictures were of deer being disturbed. And there was just no reason to go in the woods. Then the pace picked up a little bit in November, and I did have a few bucks around. But basically it was a bust of a year, and the cameras convinced me of that.
Yeah. So collectively, what Ken does, he takes the best of the week, the best of the day, and then he stores them. Tell us about the books you put together.
Yeah. Not being a tech person, my grandson showed me how I could collect these pictures. For example, 2015 pictures. So if I see one I like, I copy it, paste it, and build that file. Then they showed me how to put it on a thumb drive, which I take to Florida with me, and then I go to the drugstore, and I have a little gal help me put it in a book, and they print it out. But she basically does it for me, and I just slip her $20 for helping me.
So you've actually cataloged the last 4 years, is that correct?
Yeah.
So he's got a catalog, and I talked to Ken about QDMA and Whitetails Unlimited, because that type of information is valuable not only to Ken here on his own farm, but to others to help manage and have a balanced herd. And ladies and gentlemen, we got to take care of the herds, especially private landowners. Public land is public land, but you have private land. You need to have a balanced herd. You need to manage it because deer need 3 things. They need food, cover, and water. If you give them that, and you might add security to that, safety, since we do have bears and wolves here in northwestern Wisconsin. But if you can manage all that, you're going to have some nice bucks. And Ken has some very nice Pope and Young bucks on the wall, along with some other critters. But they've all come from his farm because he manages the farm, takes care of it, feeds it, doesn't hunt it heavy. How many stands do you have here?
I wouldn't doubt that there's 20 plus ladder stands. I did recently buy some hard-sided permanent stands, 6 of them, which only sit a couple feet off the ground. But they're painted black inside, and it's pretty amazing how close these deer can come. The other day I had a little buck looking at my decoy, and he was so close that I could smell that bugger outside the window. And he just walked around that decoy, and finally he ambled off.
Yeah, it's amazing, folks, to come and see what Ken's done. And 15 years with this property?
Yes.
And it started off, it was pretty rough. There were some trails, but he's taken to heart to manage the land, to be a steward of his land. And I'm privileged, to come and visit him every fall and spend a few days, and it's a lot of fun. Ken, in wrapping this segment up, let's talk about the gun season. This is a fun time, and talk about how many people are going to show up at the cottage, and how many years you've been hosting quite a crew in Northwestern Wisconsin.
Well, we have an eclectic bunch for sure, but we have about 10. They like to sit, and I'm convinced that it takes people moving to move deer. So Grandpa might be the one that moves the most. But the first 2 days are pretty much the guys sit, a few of us roam. And then once the Monday comes, there's a series of mini drives that we do to stir them up. And we've gotten a few big bucks. We might take 2 does just for something to eat. But and if the Packers are playing the Vikings on Sunday afternoon, you might find us in the cabin and not in the woods.
Most of Wisconsin will be watching the Packer game someplace during, the gun season. It's just the traditions. And let's roll it right into the hunting tradition. And how did that start with you?
Well, I came from Black River Falls, where we hunted down there. Then I had this place, not in the shape it is in now, but we would come up here and hunt opening weekend. Then I'd go back to Black River Falls. Well, then once I moved up here, my son-in-law, some of their friends, my cousin and I, Johnny Howard, were the old guys in the group. So we have a little seniority on which stands get used by the old guys. But it's an interesting transition where I was the main cook and bottle washer. Now I can kind of sit back and watch these boys take over. By now, boys, my son's 48. Most of his friends are the same age. And we've got a couple 12-year-old kids hanging around now that they've all shot their first buck. So now they got to shoot bigger bucks.
How about women in camp?
My son's girlfriend shot a very lovely buck last year, sitting on the ground with a 20-gauge shotgun. We jumped it. My son jumped it. It circled around and went right past her, and she dropped it. My oldest granddaughter is 12. I don't know if she's going to be involved this year or next year. She's showing more interest. I think if she got a look at the Texas Hold'em game we play at night, that she'd want to be a participant in that at least. That's a big highlight for these young kids too. They bring 10 or 20 bucks and we play Texas Hold'em. Great joy in that. Ken is not unlike a lot of camps. Yes, the stove in the kitchen might not be the wood stove that some camps have, but Wisconsin has such a strong tradition. And as you heard Ken, he's talking about his granddaughter, 12 years old, and Ken is pushing my age, and it's just a remarkable thing how we pass on the hunting tradition, because that's important, not only in Wisconsin, but through the whole country, how it
brings family together, and lessons learned. A lot of lessons are learned in deer camp that couldn't be transferred or learned anyplace else. What are some of the lessons that you learned growing up in deer camp, Ken?
Oh, wow, that's not an easy question, Bruce. I guess what I try to pass on, the key, whether it's bow hunting or rifle, we don't set the rules. The DNR sets the rules. They set the time limits, when you can hunt, when you can't. And to me, the challenge is to get that big buck that you're looking for and doing it in a way that doesn't violate any of the rules. And I used to feel quite bad if we shot one and missed it or shot one and wounded it. And I still feel bad, but I just figure I made a coyote's job a little easier, I guess, if one slips by us. But no, I've been doing this since I think I shot my first deer with the bow and arrow when I was 15, back with the cedar shafts and Zwicky heads and a bear grizzly recurve. It's progressed a little. I'm still tugging on my Matthews compound, but I may have to follow you, Bruce, into the land of the crossbow.
And it does get harder when you're hitting the 70-year-old age to pull back, even down at 50, 60 pounds, a wheel bow. It's just difficult, and we don't want to give up our traditions, our passion for hunting. So crossbows do make it easier, and for kids and for women, it's an easy way into entry into the sports. Yes, the Matthews bow or whoever you want to use, PSE or any of the great bows. Fred Bear, Ken just mentioned about the bear bows, but sometimes you want to make it easy for people to get into the sport, and then they'll go where they want to go because they're friends and stuff, and they'll say, gee, I want to use a compound bow. And the most important thing, listeners, is help people get into the woods, help them, train them, mentor them. And then as Ken has seen for over 50 years, people come and go into deer camps, but it's a family affair, because how many people will you have in deer camp come the opening season?
We'll have 10.
So there's going to be 10 people in a very nice deer camp, I might add. But that's 10 people that you're impacting and bringing together as a family. And yeah, the focal point is hunting, but there's a lot more into it because you're building long-term relationships and sharing stories and hearing about what it takes to be a hunter.
I have a fellow, Joey LaFond, will be up with his son. They come from Florida. Jake Scheffelbein is in the Air Force in Wyoming. His brother Brad is a film editor in Los Angeles. Brad will be here. And the rest are pretty much local boys.
Yeah. So you can see that it's a coming home, if you will, and some people don't understand what the hunt is all about in the traditional hunt. So share this. I think this is a great episode to share with some non-hunters, and so they can find out if they want to sit in the cabin and sleep and maybe take a walk in the woods. That's fine, because you're experiencing family, you're experiencing community, and that's what the hunting tradition is about in North America. Ken, anything you'd like to add?
No, thanks, Bruce. This has been interesting.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Whitetail Rendezvous. This is your host, Bruce Hutchin, reporting in from Northwestern Wisconsin on the KO Farms. Thank you again, Ken. As your host at Whitetail Rendezvous, I want to thank each and every one of you for spending your time with us today. I look forward to sharing with you in the next episode more whitetail hunting tips, techniques, and stories. Until then, keep the sun at your back, the wind in your face, and always be patient.
If you have any tips, comments, or suggestions, or what we can do to improve, because we're here to serve you, let us know. Thanks for listening to Whitetail Rendezvous Podcast at www.whitetailrendezvous.com.